Welcome to the Baked In Podcast, where we uncover the unique ingredients driving extraordinary success. In each episode, we explore how leaders and entrepreneurs blend business with purpose, sharing insights on leadership, culture, and practices that inspire meaningful change. This podcast is presented by Busey Bank. Since Busey opened their doors in 1868, they've upheld the pledge to foster customer relationships and vibrant communities, embodying a legacy of partnership and progress. With multiple lines of business, Busey provides a range of financial solutions tailored to your needs. From digital banking to planning for retirement, Busey is here to help you achieve your financial goals. Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Joining me today is Ruth Kim, a powerhouse leader with decades of experience at Fleishman-Hillard, where she served as General Counsel, Senior Vice President, and Senior Partner. Ruth played a pivotal role in shaping the culture and strategy at one of the world's leading communications agencies. Now, in what she calls Ruth 2.0, she's redefining retirement as an amplifier, connector, and advisor to businesses and nonprofits. Through her work and her signature hashtag Ruth Unleashed, she's helping businesses thrive while staying true to their purpose. Today, we'll take a deep dive into Ruth's career, exploring the lessons she learned at Fleishman-Hillard, her approach to leadership and growth, and how she's channeling her expertise into her current mission of empowering others. Let's roll. So, I am so thrilled to have you on here. I want to talk about your career and law and Fleishman-Hillard and all that stuff, but really the purpose of this whole thing, why I snuck you on here and invited you, was because this whole retirement thing. So I want to get there in a second, but what you're doing is so intriguing to me and so exciting, and I just turned 55, and so I don't know, something about 55 made me think about retirement more than any other birthday so far. So watching you has been really inspiring. But let's before we go there, you were at Fleishman-Hillard for 40 plus years, is that right?
No, actually, I practiced law for 40 years, but I was the General Counsel and Chief Legal Officer at Fleishman-Hillard for 18 of those years. Before that, for almost 15 years, I was the General Counsel and Chief Legal Officer of Spectrum Healthcare Services, and I started my practice in private practice doing corporate mergers and acquisitions and business law.
So going all the way back the 40 years, what drew you to law in the first place?
Oh, that's so wild. Well, the thing is, I grew up in sort of a traditional Korean family where we all played string instruments, we're good at math and science, and we're sort of pre-programmed from birth to go into medicine. And I did the whole trip. I was in the first class of women at Amherst College, so that was its own cultural experience. And I thought that I would go to medical school, but I wasn't really ready for it. And so I took a year off, and I came back to St. Louis. I got a job as an environmental consultant in Washington, D.C., but
I mean, there wasn't a lot of environmental consulting going on.
They were called the Beltway Bandits back then, and consulting firms. But I was really excited about it. But in April of that year, in the summer, I was home over the summer. I came home for the summer. They called me in August and said, "Oh, you were going to start your job in September. You can't because the kid who you were going to replace has deferred his admission to school, graduate school, so we don't have a job for you." And I thought, I got to get a job before my parents get home. So my hardworking Korean parents who put everything into us and our goals and ambitions and dreams and so forth. And so I didn't want to disappoint them. So I drove downtown and I thought, I can't work in a restaurant or a bar because I went to college and I did all this stuff, and I did that before I went to college. So I don't want them to feel like I wasted my money paying tuition. So I thought I would work in an office building, and I went downtown, and at the time, the Boatman's Bank Tower, I think it's the Bank of America building now.
Yeah, I think so.
It's chrome with the blue windows. That was new back then, 40 years ago, and I looked up at it, and I thought, I'm going to work on the top floor of that building. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Did you know who was on the top floor?
No, I just thought I'm going to get a job in an office so I can say that I went to college and I work in an office. So I went up to the top floor, and at the time it was HOK, which is the famous St. Louis architecture firm.
Sure.
But with an art history class, pre-med, political science background, I didn't think I could even BS my way into a job there. So I went down another floor, and I think it was a law firm, Guilfoyle, Petzel, and Shoemake, that had Frederick Remington cowboys and Indians art Western decor, which sort of wasn't my speed. So I went down another floor, and I think it was Banquet Frozen Foods, and I was in the first class of women at Amherst, and I thought, I cannot tell my sisters in the struggle that I'm working for frozen fried chicken. So I went down one more floor, and there was this law firm called Hush Eppenberger, Donahue, Elson, and Kornfeld. And they had just moved in, and it was beautiful, and it was modern and contemporary. And they had a beautiful receptionist named Marilyn. And I went up to her, and I said, I'd like to apply for a job. And she said, as what? And I said, I as a paralegal, I think, because my friends on the East Coast are taking a year off, and they're being a paralegal. And she said, I don't know if we hire people like that. I think you have to go to paralegal school, but you would have to talk to Terry Sale, the managing partner. So I said, can I? And she said, no, Miss Thing. He's a very busy person. You cannot just sashay in here and talk to the managing partner. You need an appointment. So I left, and I went downstairs, and back then, payphones, not caller ID, not cell phones. So I went up to the payphone, and I called upstairs, and I said, may I speak with Mr. Terry Sale? And they put me through to him. And I said, Mr. Sale, my name's Ruth Kim. I really want to have a job as a paralegal at your law firm. And he said, what, do you have paralegal experience? And I said, no, but I went to Amherst College. I know I can do this. Just give me a shot. And he said, but, you know, we prefer paralegals to have gone to Paralegal Institute here. And I said, I know I can do this. And he said, well, you're in luck. I went to Williams, which is Amherst's rival. And he said, come in for an interview. And I said, when? He goes, well, when can you come in? And I said, now? And he said, no, I can't meet with you now. So I went in the next morning. I had about one night of reprieve where I didn't have to tell my hardworking, beloved parents that I don't have a job. So I went in and I interviewed, and I kept telling them, I went to Amherst College. That has to mean something. I know I can do this. I promise I will listen so hard and listen so carefully you will never have to repeat a thing. I will knock this out of the park, I promise you. So after talking to 5 of their lawyers, they said, well, we'll give you a chance. So I was paralegal. And 6 months into it, I sort of started applying to WashU, but I kind of thought I maybe wanted to go back to the East Coast for further school because I really enjoyed Massachusetts. But the dean of Washington University called me, and he said, Ruth, this is Phil Shelton. Do you know who I am? I said, I know who you are. And he said, why aren't you finishing your application to law school? And I said, well, it's kind of late, and I need financial aid or scholarship or something, and I kind of think I want to go back to the East Coast. And he said, apply. And I said, but, you know, school is starting in a few months, and I know you're rolling admission. And he said, apply. And I did. And he said, you know, there are 2 alums at your law firm, Chris Donahue and Maury Poskover, who said they have a paralegal there who is wasting her time, and you need to be in law school. So I applied, I got in, I went.
That's a pretty flattering story, huh?
It was amazing, but you know, along the way, the thing about St. Louis is there's so many people here who, if they see you are making an effort and trying hard and doing something, they will help you. So
Right.
It's an amazing city in that regard.
Which is part, I'm sure, part of your, which we'll get to, part of your paying it forward now,
Yep.
even
Yep.
40
Yep.
years later, right? Mm-hmm. But so once you got to Fleishman-Hillard, though, your role grew out of just general counsel, right? And you were vice president and senior partner.
Yep.
And did a lot with strategy and with culture. Can you talk about that experience and sort of, we talk about a lot of that on the show. I mean, obviously not necessarily in organizations that large, you know, global, but it's such a big part of sort of growing and sustaining a business. And I'm interested to hear sort of your take on how you evolved into that and what you enjoyed about that aspect.
Well, I started in corporate and business law. And I started at a time where women were getting into law, and it was tough. It was, you know, I had partners say to me things like, are you in this for the practice of law, or you just want to meet a husband? Which you can't say that kind of stuff now, but they said that kind of stuff then. And then I went in-house to Spectrum Healthcare, where I was their general counsel, who was actually a client of Fleishman-Hillard, and that's how I met. And after 14 years of work as an in-house general counsel at a healthcare firm, Fleishman was looking for a general counsel, and I moved over. And at first I think I was told, you should really stick to legal. We run the business, you stick to law. But what happens in any business, if you're a good counselor, and what my mentors have told me, is you want to become a consigliere. You want to become a trusted advisor where they pull you in because you understand the business, you know how to solve problems, and you're not afraid to take the ball. So I was really proud to do that at Fleishman-Hillard. And as you know, it's a agency that was founded in St. Louis more than 80 years ago. And it has more than 86 offices around the world, so always on the time clock, because at any point in time, at any point in the day, somebody is having business hours.
Right.
But the thing that I appreciated the most was being able to be a leader, a diverse leader, being an Asian woman in the C-suite, being able to sit at the side of the president and talk to the executives about not just legal issues, but strategic and cultural and integration, if you will, or inclusion, and really trying to develop a culture of belonging. Because we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, but really, if people don't feel like they belong and that they have a sense of place there, then all of that other stuff sort of falls by the wayside.
Right. And I mean, all those ideas are certainly under attack again today.
Oh, yeah.
And we're gonna avoid that because we don't do a lot of politics here. But
No.
I mean, anything in particular during that time, strategy, initiatives, things that you were involved in that are particularly memorable to you that you look back on? I mean, and obviously it was many years, so probably a lot.
Yes.
A couple of them?
So many. One of my favorite things, though, was being a mentor in-house, and not a legal mentor, and not a subject matter mentor, but being a mentor to young professionals who are coming up. And I thought and I felt that I could see something in some of them that maybe were being overlooked. And so sometimes you would have a brand new employee and the general counsel, chief legal officer of the company would walk into her office and say, you know, I've noticed that you are either struggling or that you have a lot on the ball, but you're not being heard or listened to. And some of it is in the way you might be communicating, presenting, et cetera. And so the opportunity to just look into the whole network of amazing individuals and see people who are diamonds in the rough, and to be able to go to them and offer them behind the scenes support, encouragement, advice, and advocate on their behalf.
And that wasn't a formalized program.
No.
I mean, these were just individuals that you spotted along the way.
Yes, they did have, and they still have, the Alfred Fleischman, who's really a famous founder of the firm, Diversity Fellows. And I met some of those diverse fellows, and they were from different backgrounds, or they might have just been not from diverse backgrounds, but supported and believed in diversity and inclusion and belonging. And I loved being able to spot that kind of talent and to give them encouragement. Because when I was coming up, I really missed that. I was fortunate that along the way, I lucked into or found or overlapped with amazing mentors. And they made all the difference. So that was my joy. But the other stuff, the global meetings were fun. You know, having a meeting with 300 people from around the world. In the early days, we used to do that and get together with the senior leadership.
That was pre-Zoom and yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing to meet people from every different culture. And, you know, when I would talk on the phone to somebody, I would realize if you listen, the speaking manner, the speech pattern is different than the way Americans speak. So when I first got there, one of the human resources talent development people called me and said, oh, one of our people from this office thought that you were angry with them. And I wasn't. I was just being quick, matter of fact, to the point, you know. But in some cultures, you need to first do the, oh, hello, how's it going? How are you? the whole, and your tone of voice needs to be a little bit different too. So that was fascinating and interesting. And over the years, Fleishman grew from, before I was there, it grew to many offices, and it has continued to grow. So that's kind of a cool thing.
So when you look back on that position, did you spend the majority of your time building culture, thinking about strategy? Was it a lot of legal? I mean, did you start to evolve the position to make it your own, or was that sort of the nature of the way they wanted that role to develop there?
In both of my general counsel positions, I was the first. So they never even had a lawyer in-house. Or at Fleishman, they had a junior lawyer in-house, but they did not have a general counsel position. And so I kind of had to make it my own. And that was the great aspect of it. Part of it was, since it was such a small legal department, reviewing hundreds and hundreds of contracts. And then the other part of it was helping to navigate legal, regulatory, ethical, and cultural issues.
Around the world, too.
Around the world. So it was never dull. And because I was usually always on the clock, there were some days where I had endless hours. I mean, there were a few days I remember where I literally worked almost a 36-hour stretch. I came into the office, worked all day, the phone rang at 7. It was somebody from Hong Kong, which is 7 a.m. in their morning. They had an issue they needed me on, and I stayed at the office until 3 a.m., ready to go home. Somebody from London called because they were at 9 a.m., so I stayed there until their morning, and then it was time to work back on U.S. time. So there were days like that, but it suited my personality. I feel like I was a jack of all trades, right, master of none. So I could spot the issues, but if I needed somebody really brilliant, the best part of the job was being able to tap the most brilliant lawyers in the world or in the country and to learn from them. And for the entire time I was there, I felt like I was learning, which is an amazing job to have.
And then it kind of came to an end. Was that sort of, I mean, were you thinking ahead to what you wanted to do next before you left, or when did the transition start for you as you started to think about it? And you used a word before we started talking, which was rewirement, I think.
Retirement seems so passive and receding, and rewiring the way you do things seemed more appealing to me. So I like the word rewirement. But as you become a certain age, you just start feeling like I've scaled this mountain. The career, the title, the visibility, the nice house, the kids in college, the nice car, all of that stuff. And you start looking around thinking, what is my next mountain? What is my next adventure? And I didn't want to do it when I was too old to enjoy and to use the energy and interest and pursue the interest with vigor. So I wanted to retire at a time that I felt still vibrant and in the flow and where I really could rewire. So I started thinking about it almost 10 years before my actual retirement. I started thinking about getting my finances in order, making sure that once you have your retirement funding settled, that is a big worry that you can sort of put aside. If you've saved aggressively, if you've paid off your mortgage, et cetera, then it gives you some freedom that other people might not have. But then as the time got closer, I started realizing I used to be that person where every time a problem came across my desk, I'd roll up my sleeves and say, okay, I got this. And then I was kind of getting to the point where a problem would come across my desk and I would say, seriously? What the F, And I realized that's probably not the best way to be approaching problems. And I had
But there is a level of, maturity that comes with recognizing that some of these problems that people are bringing to you. I mean, I say a lot to people, your emergency is not my problem today. Like
right.
you can take on some of this yourself. You can solve some of this on your own, and almost pushing back instead of just taking one more monkey on your back or on your plate or something. And I think that's part of an evolution too.
I think that's so true. One of the mentors that I really respected said, when I said, I feel like maybe I'm slowing down, and he said, no, you're thinking differently. You think in a different way, and you will find that you can solve problems faster, and you can integrate and filter information much more efficiently and in a more prioritized and organized way. And he was right about that, because when I first started, I suffered terribly from imposter syndrome. And I realize now in retrospect that nobody's really an imposter. You just are junior or young in your career and you're learning. But as I got older, that really went away. And I feel comfortable in, am I as great as some of the best lawyers in the world? No. But I think I'm better than many and not as good as some. And that was okay. But when I started out, I really wanted to be the best. And the best meant, after spending a whole day at the office, going back to the law library, re-researching everything I did until midnight. And that was a tough life.
When did you let go of that need to be the best?
It happened around 5 years into my career. And it's interesting because there's that, I don't know if it's true or not, but there is some theory that after 10,000 hours of doing something, you get pretty competent of it. And after 5 years and working about 2,000 hours, roughly a year, I started seeing repeatability, and I started seeing, oh, I've done this before. But what really happened was I had an incredible mentor named Alan Johnson, and I worked on some really intense corporate deals with him. But I was still in that I want to be the best and I'm never going to be the best. And I watched him put together incredible deals with an incredible team. And I thought, I'm never going to be that good. And finally one day, I told him I was quitting. I was going to go in-house and just become a mediocre lawyer somewhere. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, I look at you, and it's like you are on the hill, the mountain over there, and I am in the desert, trudging across the desert, and the mountain's not getting any friggin' closer. And it's killing me to be this close to that kind of excellence and to know I'm never going to reach it. It's too painful for me, being type A and sort of ambitious at the time. I said, I can't watch this. I can't be this close to that kind of excellence and know I'm never going to reach it. And he said, Ruth, you have it all wrong. And I said, no, I think I'm pretty self-aware, and I think I'm aware of what my limitations and capabilities are. And he said, no, if, for purposes of analogy, let's take yours. He goes, I'm not on this mountain, as you say, et cetera, but let's go with it. And he said, but if you stand where I'm standing and look back at where you are, I see, and you stop and turn in your tracks and turn around, you will see the distance you traversed from the horizon to get to where you are. That is so much farther than to get from where you are to where I am. And you just don't have that perspective. And I don't like to show emotion in business meetings, and I burst into tears.
Yeah, what a gift, though, for him to be able to say
right?
that,
Like,
right?
so generous. The best mentors are those who are both philosophically, intellectually, and capability-wise generous. And he said, Ruth, you are exactly where you need to be. Keep marching. You are doing what you have to do. You will get here. And I just didn't believe him at the time, and I was so stubborn. And he said, you can come back Monday, and we will pretend that you didn't quit. You can just come back into your office and pick up exactly where you left off, and we will work on these deals together. And I didn't. I did stay in touch with him, and he continued to be a lifelong mentor. But the interesting thing is now, decades later, where I am the age that he was when he was talking to me, I look back and I think, yeah, I can do everything that he did. And I actually think I might be able to do some more. And I realized I didn't give myself grace, but I had a mentor who was willing to. I just didn't listen to him.
Yeah, I mean, think about how many of us in any aspect, whether it's athletic, whether it's business, whether it's family, we quit because it just looks insurmountable, right? And we don't have that perspective to look backwards.
Yep. But, I have to say that my father was a person who, when we look at all of our mentors, my father was an incredible mentor. My art history professor changed the way I looked at the world and life and my place in the world and how I moved through it. Alan, this partner who was a mentor, so many lawyers out in private practice. And mentors don't have to be in your same field. They can be. You can have a style mentor. You can have a communication mentor. You can have, and so just what I tell people that I'm mentoring now is look and observe. And if you see something about somebody that you really appreciate, whether it's how they move through space or communicate or how they dress, get to know them. You don't have to designate them officially your mentor, but get to know them and absorb and just keep learning. And it's just an amazing thing, because my father's gift to me was a sense of identity, that even in your weakest or darkest times, you need to have a sense of who you are, or else all is lost if you don't.
Yeah, and I do believe that the people that you can surround yourself with, that's how the 5 people you spend the most time with is really
Who are some of your mentors?
My dad also, without question. My father was and continues to be actually. He grew up in the food business. He ran a food business his whole life, and that same thing. And you talk about that maturity of what seems like this huge issue to him wasn't a huge issue because he had experienced it before. So the ability to sort of kind of, I don't want to say roll with the punches as if it isn't significant, but the ability to just not overreact, to take it on, to fix the problem, to set the direction, to do those things in a manner that was super calm.
So here's a question for you, because I think you're a fascinating person, but you're always asking the questions. But this is interesting to me. Is there something, talking about mentors and learning and getting seasoning, when you look back on your life, was there a big challenge that you faced that you look at now and say, knowing what I now know, I might have approached that differently? Was there something that sticks out in your mind that you look at and you think, if I could do that over, I would do it differently, because not just because of regret or anything, but because of seasoning or some perspective that you've learned?
Yeah, I think you talked about it in the same way, because when I started the bakery, probably the first 3 or 4 years, I worked 20 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. We weren't open on Sunday when I first opened the business, but we still had to do some preparation. But I went into work at 9 p.m. and I got home at 5 p.m. the next day and went to bed for a few hours and went back. And that was a lack of confidence that I could delegate and have others do the work that I was doing, like this need to control, the need to be the best, the need to figure it all out, this unwillingness to share that responsibility. And I mean, geez, if I knew half of what I know now, then how much easier it would have been. Probably would have grown faster. I mean, I was getting in my own way in order to grow the business because I just wouldn't let go of any of that stuff. And I think that's, and I know, and maybe to a certain degree we have to go through that, right? Because we have to learn every aspect. I mean, that was, and I say it a lot on the podcast, like my grandfather always said, it's all work and it all needs to be done. And everybody, it doesn't matter who does it. It doesn't matter whether it's taking out the trash, cleaning out a truck, making the bread, whatever it is. And there's that element of I wanted to learn and know how to do everything before I ever told anybody else to do it. Right. But I also think that I held on to it for way too long.
It's hard though, right? Because it's your baby. And the thing is, part of that I wonder about is Companion has such incredible reputation for the quality of its products, right? And would it have that if you didn't do that? Who knows?
Right. I don't know.
Right.
So, in this rewirement, as you refer to it, you I think you define yourself as an amplifier, a connector, and an advisor. Are those the 3 words? So, tell me about like that thought process and I mean, you seem incredibly active. I mean, I kind of following you on LinkedIn and Instagram and sort of in socials and the way that you are just promoting St. Louis and people, kind of what we talked about before, sort of paying forward what you believe you got a long time ago. It's very inspiring. So just kind of talk me through sort of how you pick and choose what it is that you get involved in and what's been the most rewarding aspect of it, at least early, because I have a feeling like you're just sort of getting started.
I am. So about 2 years before I retired, when I sort of knew that it was coming, I just didn't have the exact date, I started having lunch and coffee and so forth with retired, recently and longer retired CEOs, C-suite people, chief legal officers, to find out how they were doing it. And there were some people I met who I thought, oh my God, they're crushing it. And there were other people who I met.
Crushing retirement.
Yeah. And there were other people I met that I thought, that's a hot mess. I do not want that to happen to me. And other people who I thought, well,
how did you get these people for coffee? I mean,
I called them and I asked. I said, I understand you recently retired. I'm thinking about my career path and what I want to do next. And I read the book Transitions, which was a book written, I think, in the 70s, but career counselors and so forth, coaches are still using it. And that talks about going through major transitions in your life, whether it's divorce, a job ending, et cetera. So parts of that were interesting, but parts of it I felt didn't apply. And then I read, I think it's called The Second Mountain, and it's by the writer David Brooks, and he tends to be more to the right of me than I am, so I don't usually align with his politics, but his book about your next mountain, your first mountain is the one with job, career, blah, 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 and your second mountain is what is it that is your passion, what gets you up in the morning, what drives you. And so when I was meeting with people, and people are amazingly generous, if you just call them and tell them what it is, that there's no angle here, but I'm thinking about retiring, I want to understand how you did it, what you like about it, what you didn't. People are really generous if you ask. So I realized, and one of my friends, Anna Crosland, who is the retired CEO of International Institute, said to me that what she wants to do in her retirement in this phase of her life is to leave things a little bit better than before she passed through there. And I thought, I'm stealing that. That's what I want to do. I want to make a beneficial difference. I want to have an impact. And so I've used that as my gating criteria. When somebody asks me to get involved in something, I think about, if I get involved, will I make it better? Will things be better because of my involvement? And if the answer is no, then that's an easy no.
How do you look at those opportunities and sort of qualify that? Is that based on your experience, based on what they're asking for, or what their needs are, or whether that's a board position versus a volunteer event position or something?
Yes, it's all of those things. It's one, it's interest. Is it an interest or a cause or a mission that I respond to, that I like, that I support? It is, do I have time to do it in a way that I want to do it? And it is, do I bring any skills or any abilities or experience that I know can contribute to that? So I'm on a number of boards right now, and on one of the boards, I feel like I'm less effective. So I'm not sure that I'm going to stay on it. I love the mission of the organization. I support them, but I don't know if the amount of time or effort that I put into it is moving the needle the way I would want to. So I'm not sure. That's one that I'm thinking about. But
have you asked them out of curiosity?
Ask them
how they feel about your participation? Because sometimes I think there's a tendency for us to feel like we're not helping or not doing as much as we could, and maybe they would feel differently.
It's still early in terms of my thought process on that. So I feel like I have to figure out how I'm feeling about it before I talk to them further.
Sure. And there is a finite amount of hours in the day. Right. And it seems like, just from following you, that there are probably more opportunities that are presented to you than you can actually accomplish. So you have to prioritize and
what's really
find those passions.
Yeah, because what's really hard is your ego wants to jump on it. When somebody says, will you do this? The tendency for people like you and me is to say yes, because I want to help, and I'm so flattered that you would ask. But then you find out there is a finite amount of time. So the other issues, the gating issues, are not just can I make a difference, but does that bring me joy? And I don't mean not hard work, because right now one of the organizations that I dearly love, that you know that I love, is the Danforth Plant Science Center. Right. I think that they are changing the world in our backyard by using plant science to make a huge difference. And we are going through a search process for the new president as the current president retires. And that is taking a huge amount of work in terms of meeting candidates, interviewing, reviewing backgrounds. And I'm on their executive committee, I lead their conflicts committee, I'm on the board, I'm on their campaign committee, and I'm on their friends committee. So that's a lot of stuff for one organization. And then I'm also on various other boards. I just joined the History Museum board, and I love the Gateway Arch Park Foundation board with Ryan McClure. That board, the arch is so iconic, and that's wonderful. Then the Civic Pride Foundation board of Explore St. Louis, that tries to ignite civic pride in our city, and the International Institute, which rehomes and resettles refugees and immigrants in our region. But some of the activities that I love I'm not actually on boards of. So I love supporting the Opera Theater's New Works Collective. It's the first program, or the only program of its kind in St. Louis, where an opera theater company actually pays for young artists to learn how to write an opera. So they had a competition, and the New Works Collective selects 3 teams. And in February, from the 6th, 7th, and 8th, at COCA, they will be putting on their operas. There are 3 teams. There's a pair of African-American men, a black woman and a black man, and 2 Taiwanese women who each wrote an opera. And it's a 20-minute opera, and they have to do everything. They have to do the music, the scoring, the casting, work with the costumers, work with the set design. And the goal is to bring diverse talent and audiences into opera, Western opera, which is maybe not cultural to some of the other cultures.
Right.
So that's something that I'm spending time bringing people to. I love supporting the art museum, and Min Jung is doing amazing things there with the exhibits that are coming this year. She is bringing Anselm Kiefer, who did that big statue in the main hall. I think it's called The Breaking of the Vessels. It's about Kristallnacht. It's the most amazing, gigantic iron and glass sculpture. And he's a German sculptor artist who the Germans were not really happy on his telling of Holocaust stories and his art. So they kind of made him uncomfortable in Germany, I think, and he moved to France. And they're bringing a world-class exhibit for the first time of this magnitude. I mean, some of his pieces are so large they have to come by steamship. So she's bringing that, and she's bringing an exhibit on the classic cars from the early 1900s and how it affects dress and so forth. But more importantly, she does things like the Art Museum had its immigration and naturalization ceremony in the Grand Hall. So citizens, for the first time, got to see this art museum while they became citizens, and she gave all the families a year membership. So it's that kind of thing that people in our community are doing that just amaze me. And, TEDx, you were a speaker on there. I'm supportive of them. The Great Rivers Greenway Brick Line being the connector of everything that's going on. I'm trying to do what I can to help amplify that. So there's so many additional initiatives in addition to just board stuff that make my time fulfilling and make me feel like I am in the flow and contributing and making a difference. And then the last criteria is, if you want to do stuff for fun, do it, as long as it does no harm, right? So I do a lot of things, just whether it's travel or hanging with my husband or my dogs or kids or whatever. And I really enjoy that. And I just signed up for the Master Gardener class at the Botanical Garden. So
you're certainly staying busy.
Yeah, but
are you still mentoring? Are you doing?
Yes.
Because I know we're serving on a board together for profit for a manufacturing company. So you're doing some things that it's not all nonprofit work, right?
Right.
How's the balance between those two, and how do you make those decisions, right? Because those are. So again, time is limited, right?
I am doing some mentoring for the Asian American Chamber of Commerce. They have a young business person mentoring program. So I'm really honored to be a mentor to a rising young star in that community. And I'm doing some mentoring at the Danforth Plant Science Center to the rising young scientists. And then I have people who have reached out to me because I've either spoken somewhere or done something that say, can we just meet for coffee every few months to talk about where I'm going and what I'm doing. And so I'm doing that. And then, to my great surprise and really honor, I've had some companies reach out to me to do paid consulting. And so, assuming the scope of the project is right, the timing, the fee arrangement, et cetera, I'm doing some of that. But mostly, I'm doing things where I feel like I can make a difference, or that it's joyful, that I'm really, and it doesn't mean that it's not hard work, because sometimes hard work can be joyful too. as you well know.
Right. No, I mean, I've had an opportunity in the last couple of years to sit down with a lot of newly minted food industry people that just reach out, and you sort of forget that 31 years, 32 years of experience doing something has value, and that just to your point, just having coffee every couple of months, just sort of talking through some of their issues, and again thinking about it in a way that they hadn't thought about because they don't have the luxury of all of that time and experience. Really, it makes a difference. It's fun. I always learn something because you sort of learn something new in those conversations and in sort of a different way to think about things. But then you also add some value, and it doesn't cost anything, right? It's an hour. It's a good cup of coffee. It's an opportunity to pay it forward, to your point, which just feels good. Like there is something intuitively selfish about those moments for me, that because it's just nice to do it.
I so agree with you, because I don't look at mentoring as a one-way street. I am amazed at the brilliance and the ingenuity and the optimism that so many of the people that we mentor have. And so I feel like I'm learning from them too. And I feel like it helps me stay current. I have two nieces, one in London and one in Korea, who are out there, and I have a nephew who's amazing too, and they're all doing things that in their own way are changing the world. And they have their own perspectives, and when I talk to them, I'm always enlivened, and they renew my sense of faith in the future. When I see people like that who are wanting to make a difference, who are going about their lives in the best way that they can, it's exciting for me, and it's fun, like you say, and it's enlivening.
Yeah. I mean, we've just gotten involved this year with 1% for the Planet, which was something that an organization that sort of, it's certified giving because it's sort of vetting the environmental partners of the organization, and I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and I realized what a joy to have a business that's mature enough and in a position to be able to give 1% of our top line of revenue back, right?
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
It's taken us a number of years to do it. It's something I've wanted to do for 10 years, and candidly, moving into a new factory, having all the challenges that we have, we weren't able to do it, and you reach a point where you reach that level that you can do it, and then you start to see all these organizations and people that are doing some incredible things, and maybe you get to support those in some way, whether it's financially or in kind or something. But all those, it's neat to reach that level, and I wasn't sure for a long time.
It's pretty thrilling, right? It's pretty thrilling, and I'm so proud of you guys that you are here in St. Louis, that you founded this company in St. Louis, and that it has been here. I can't believe, 30 years?
Yeah, this is 32.
It's stunning to me, because I remember when you started out and there was this new company called Companion, and we were so excited. And the thing is, I still love your bread. So,
well, and I think that's the thing about St. Louis that's it's unique in its way, that it embraces people that bring something back and bring something new, but it continues to embrace those folks, and there's. It's big enough and small enough to sort of do both of those things, right? To support the companies that have been around for 30 plus years and still make us feel like we're a big part of the community, but it also can embrace the brand new, couples that are launching a new bakery or one-man shops or kind of new endeavors in the same way with as much enthusiasm, and it's not a zero-sum game. It seems to really to do that in a way, and it's neat to follow you and sort of the way that you're amplifying everything that's happening in St. Louis, and it's certainly an inspiration to me to see it. And if folks want to sort of follow along, what the hashtag is Ruth Unleashed.
It is.
Is that right?
And that was fun, because when I was at the History Museum, Sam Moore came up to me and said, "Oh, so you're retired?" And I said, "Rewired, Sam, I'm rewired." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm sort of like a free radical now. I don't have any corporate bonds that I have to observe protocol or anything." And he goes, "Oh, you're Ruth Unleashed." And I thought, that is my new hashtag. So I just started it recently, but it's beginning to pick up, and it's so fun, because I associate that with things that I'm doing in St. Louis that I explore or discover. So I went to BioSTL and met Don Rubin and Amy Gwynn and the team over there for the first time, and was amazed and blown away by these St. Louisans like you, who have started something here and are just day to day, going in, day out, making sure their business is standing up, employing people, moving the region forward. And, Ola Ayeni with Claim Academy, Mary Elizabeth Grimes with the Marion Middle School for Girls, which is an amazing place too, and the Boys and Girls Club. And so we have so many things, and we have so much excitement right now. We have a new director at the Botanical Garden, Lucia Lohman, who, if you haven't met her yet, you should. She's remarkable, and a lot of changes in our city, but our city it has its challenges, and I think this is our time. I think this is St. Louis's time. I think if we don't seize what is happening here we have the largest number of plant scientists in the world in St. Louis. They're doing good here. I think at the end of 2003, Food and Wine named us the next great food city, right?
Yeah.
And we have James Beard winners here. We have entrepreneurs here. The Federal Reserve Bank did a report that showed our cost of living and our housing values were great, and our crime is going down. And we have free institutions. We have an amazing art museum. We have an amazing history museum. We have a world-class botanical garden, and it goes on. And it's not even just the famous things. It is things like Grand Center with our small black box theaters here and so forth. So St. Louis right now is a time where we need to retain and keep our talent and attract new talent here. We need to welcome people from different backgrounds and places, because we need people here, because you need people to drive your economy. And so chasing people away because they're different or they don't look the way you want them to look is so short-sighted and misguided. When I was here earlier in the 80s, starting out my legal career, we were trying to get mid-cap companies and so forth started. And we kind of went up the slippery slope and slid back. Right now, with the National Geospatial Institute here, with that whole development, with our plant science, with life science at Cortex, with tech at T-Rex, this is our time. This is St. Louis's time, and we need to all start rowing in the same direction. We're all in different boats. They're all different sizes, but a rising tide floats all boats. And so, as the corny saying goes, we're not in the same boat, but we're in the same ocean.
Yeah, we'll keep delivering the message, and it's been fun to follow you, and
I'm so
really
honored
appreciate
that you do, Josh. I was so surprised when I got the call, and I'm
well, it's making a difference. You're making a difference. So I will continue to follow Ruth Unleashed, and continued good luck, and thanks for spending some time with me today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed sharing these insights from folks I truly admire. Be sure and follow the show in your favorite podcast player to be alerted to newly released episodes. And share a comment if you have any feedback or future contributor recommendations.